Okay, we're ready whenever you are.
I'm waiting for 6:30.
1 minute.
It might be illegal to start before the published time. Okay, I call the meeting to order at 6:30 on the dot. And good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We've got Dominique and Kai sitting in. I'll be chairing tonight's meeting, obviously, on behalf of Mayor Peckford, who sends her regrets. So I'm looking for one of the councillors to read our land acknowledgement. Can I call on someone to do that? Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan. So now, as per usual, I'm going to share a few quick updates and highlights from across the community that were prepared by staff. First, for hockey fans, the Kemptville 73s are at home this evening at the Municipal Centre. If you're brave enough, they're taking on Hawkesbury at 7 p.m. And if you're looking for some local action, it's always great to come out and support our junior team. In other hockey news, I'm pleased to share that the outdoor rink at Riverside Park is now open for the season. Thanks to our Parks and Rec staff and the favorable weather, although tonight may be an exception. But I'm sure they're all out there with their shovels, clearing it off if they're interested. Once again, residents can enjoy free outdoor skating in the heart of Kemptville. It's a great opportunity for families and neighbors to get outside, stay active, and make the most of winter. The community is invited to a pilot community dinner on Tuesday, December 16th from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Armory or the Blake Williamson Memorial Hall on Rubin Crescent. This free or by donation meal is a trial run for a new weekly dinner initiative aimed at reducing food insecurity and social isolation in North Grenville, and starting weekly in January. Everyone is welcome, and it's a wonderful opportunity to share a hot meal, connect with neighbors, and support a growing community-led effort. This coming Saturday and Sunday, December 13th and 14th, the Municipal Centre will host the Eastern Ontario Craft and Gift 2-day Christmas market, featuring 40 vendors, free admission and parking, door prizes, and plenty of local gift options. It runs from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. both days. And also on Saturday, December 13th at 2 p.m., the Kemptville Male Choir will perform Marion Bright, a Christmas concert for Youth at Heart at the Urbandale Arts Centre. This year's concert supports the Kemptville Youth Centre, a wonderful way to enjoy festive music while supporting local youth. Residents can find full event details on our community events calendar at northgrenville.ca. Finally, a quick note regarding our winter parking. As we move deeper into winter under the updated parking bylaw, on-street overnight parking is generally permitted, except during declared winter storm events such as tonight. When a storm event ban is declared, vehicles must be off the street overnight so our crews can clear the roads safely and efficiently. The easiest way to stay up to date on parking bans, municipal alerts, and local events is to sign up for email notifications on the municipal website. These alerts are also posted on social media and appear as a banner across the top of the home page. I'll look to the rest of council if they have any other updates they'd like to feature. Seeing none, we'll move on. Now, tonight's agenda. I'm looking for a mover and seconder for the adoption of the agenda.
I'll move.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Straker-Yan. That the agenda for December 10th, 2025 be approved as presented. So moved by Deb Wilson and Councillor Straker-Yan. Next, the declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any members with a declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move on to our public meetings. This evening, we're going to be holding two public meetings as required under the Planning Act for two files, ZBA 1025 and ZBA 1125. And as per usual, there are some legislated language that I have to read at the beginning of these public meetings. This meeting is for council to consider the two applications and hear from the planning department, applicants, and members of the public on the applications. Council may choose to approve, deny, or defer the approval of the planning applications. If an application is denied, only the applicant or the minister may file an appeal with the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. Only specified persons, public bodies, registered owners of land to which the plan may apply, the requester to amend the plan, and the minister may appeal the decision of the municipality of North Grenville to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. That seems rather repetitive, but anyways, excluding the minister, any party wishing to make an appeal must make written or oral submissions to council at a public meeting. If you have not provided oral or written comments but wish to receive formal notice of council's decision on the matter, please contact the planning department. The notice will provide further information on appealing the decision. The planner will be asked to present the planning report for each application. The applicant will then be provided with an opportunity to make comments, followed by those wishing to speak in favor of the application, then followed by those wishing to speak in opposition to the application. Please be advised that by participating in the public meeting and providing your written or oral comments, you are consenting to your name and address forming part of the official record related to the planning application. So before we go any further, I'd like to address some considerations for the virtual meeting this evening. Members of the public, please keep your cameras off unless called upon by the chair. Please use the raised hand feature, which is at the bottom if you're on Zoom, and I guess we all must be on Zoom. And wait to be addressed before turning your camera on and unmuting. Now, to consider the first application, ZBA 10-25, it's submitted by Ursa Properties Limited for lands known as 2973 2979 County Road 43. And now I invite Phil Mosher, our Director of Planning and Development, to present the planning report. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just corrected the Deputy Director of Planning and Development. So thanks for the upgrade, but
did I not say that?
you omitted the deputy part.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right.
Okay, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to run through my presentation fairly quickly. I do know that Dominique Tremblay with Concilio Planning is here on behalf of the applicant. So this zone amendment application request that we've received is for the subject property 2973, 2979 County Road 43. And the purpose of the application is to amend the zoning at the subject property from shopping center commercial exception to highway commercial exception. There's a few things that would be affected by the requested change. The main change is that the shopping center commercial zoning today truncates the list of permitted uses to only a few, whereas the applicant desires to go to a highway commercial zone, which would allow a broad range of all types and forms of highway commercial uses. The other specific request that was forming part of the application was to permit an increase in gross leasable floor area. Previously, the zone exception C45 capped it at 2,400 square meters, and there's been a request to increase that to 3,000 square meters. Tonight, staff is recommending that the public meeting be held, that any comments that are to be put forward do be put forward by members of the public or others. But that no decision is made. We'll get into that a little bit more, but essentially, this deals with some interesting changes under North Grenville's official plan, which required a specific study to be prepared and also required peer review that study. And we don't quite have a full conclusion on those, a few of those points. So I'll get into that a little bit more. So with this application, staff received a planning rationale, which was prepared by Concilio Planning Services, a change of use, expansion, and impact study for a property in North Grenville, which had been prepared by Shore Tanner and Associates. And that study, which staff doesn't have expertise to peer review to review on our own, we asked for FBM to conduct a peer review, which was completed on November 28, which is just 12 days ago. Okay, so let's talk a bit about where the property is. You see it here on the red star, and the zoning is indicating that it's C45. It's located on 43. You may know it as, it's currently the Score. It's been PV Mart, it's been TSC. It's been around since I think 2007, and it's had different owners over time. Around it within the vicinity, it's another highway. It's again on 43, so it's that highway commercial corridor, which is Highway 43 being one of the main arterial roads within North Grenville. We have gas stations on the east and west. We have shopping stores to the south, being Giant Tiger, KFC, Dollarama. And then we have a residential subdivision and a watercourse located just to the north. You can somewhat see the watercourse as it snakes through here and empties into the Rideau River. And then this would be the Creek subdivision. So again, lands are zone C45. And if we look at our official plan, the property itself is designated as highway commercial, as are the vast majority of properties that front onto Highway 43. The Creek subdivision to the rear is residential, and then lands over to the east here are economic enterprise. And this just shows it in a little bit more color. So you can see, again, this is the location of the store here. McEwen's gas station, Stinson's, Giant Tiger, just for orientation. So staff have reviewed this application in light of the PPS, the county's official plan, and the municipal official plan. And we have to provide the opinion that in general, we do think that this development is consistent with the PPS. The full report goes into more detail as to why this is the case, but essentially it's allowing growth to occur within a settlement area, which is to be the focus of growth, and within a strategic area. It's occurring on County Road 43, and this is an area that's been identified as being of importance for this type of growth in the community. It's going to promote economic development and competitiveness by providing for a mix and range of broad mixed uses to meet long-term needs, and this is also seen to be of benefit. And again, it continues to provide and plan for and protect the Highway 43 corridor. So one minor point that's still somewhat outstanding is consistency with section 2.8.1.1. And that is how the proposed development takes into account the needs of the existing and future businesses. And I'll talk a bit more about this in the official plan section for North Grenville. The county's plan does designate it as a settlement area, which is to be the focus of growth with land use patterns that efficiently use land and support infrastructure. And again, this development is consistent with the county's higher level official plan and continues to accommodate evolving needs related to economic activity within our community. For North Grenville, it's mostly consistent with our plan. Again, there's one minor detail that we're still working out, but it promotes development within the County Road 43-44 corridor. It continues highway commercial uses. The expansion of list of uses would be permitted and is in keeping with what's required in the highway commercial zone. And it's a vehicle-oriented development. So the one point I want to spend a bit of time to speak about is the retail market impact analysis. Again, staff, and then this is a little bit more detail in the written report. We're not experts in this field, and we did request that there be the submission of a retail market impact analysis. And this is based primarily on North And that section says that any application that proposes to establish or expand a retail commercial development having a per unit gross leasable floor area in excess of 1,850 square meters may be required to include a retail market impact study satisfactory to the municipality. And that is the basis on which we asked for this study. There was a bit of back and forth with the applicant as to whether it was required because there's some discretionary language there in the plan. But when we looked at the history of the property and what had happened in 2007, we felt strongly that it was very much in the municipality's best interest to require this type of a study. So the Shore Tanner study was commissioned. I have read the report. And I summarized some findings from it for personal notes. And then we reached out to qualified firms to undertake a peer review of the Shore Tanner work. And FBM was selected as the successful individual firm to complete the peer review. So I guess the main difference between the Shore Tanner work and the FBM peer review is that Shore Tanner believes that there should be essentially no limit or restriction on the gross leasable floor area that's applied to this specific property. And further, that a supermarket is the best and highest use, or a grocery store, and that, again, there should be no limit. FBM, I guess, professionally disputed that claim and said when they did an analysis of the market and they looked at existing grocery stores within the area, that to allow there to be up to 3,000 square meters of grocery space may be too much too soon, and that a more reasonable cap would be 1,400 square meters. Since this report has been written, staff was able to facilitate a meeting and some conversations with the owner. The author of the peer review received some updated information from Shore Tanner, and I think we've got a lot more information that's kind of out for review at this time. So that's, again, another reason why it's good to hold the meeting and see if there's any other additional comments that arise. But we don't have a conclusion on what's the total gross leasable floor area that should be devoted to grocery or any other use. It's still up in the air, but we think we have a workable solution. We just haven't formally received updated reports and or review of those updated reports by FBM. But again, I think we have something that's going to be a little bit more than 1,400 square meters, but maybe not the full 3,000 that's been asked for. So that point will be clarified soon. I guess in terms of what's being requested for the zoning bylaw, this is an excerpt from Concilio Planning's report. We see that there's permitted uses limited to just these 5, which is quite cumbersome if you're trying to promote highway commercial and a broad range of uses. So again, the change there would be that all uses permitted in the C3 are allowed, and there's about 30 plus uses that would then be available. Again, this maximum gross leasable floor area currently capped at 2,400 square meters, which would go up to 3,000. This is still in discussion. We hope to come back with something. The increase in height to 13 meters is fine from a staff perspective. That's in keeping with the highway commercial zone. There's no issue there. The previous zoning on the property did limit parking to a minimum of 70 spaces, required a minimum of 70 spaces, and there's no real issue there from staff's perspective. Same with loading spaces and landscape buffers. So again, staff has no issue with the uses. The other requested zone amendments, it's just this, how much should be devoted to grocery, in keeping with our official plan and trying to assess the impact to existing businesses. We did circulate this application in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. We received an email of no comment from Bylaw Services and the Public Works Department. We did receive an email from the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, and essentially noting that once County Road 43 construction is complete, there's going to be a 5-year moratorium on construction within the roadway. So if there was any required service connections or upgrades to services, that they be completed as soon as possible. And we also received an email of no objection from Enbridge Gas. So again, we're just recommending that we get any and all comments tonight. We think we have a workable solution where we'll be hopefully pleased to come back at a future meeting. We would like to target the 16th if that's possible, but we'll see what comes from a continued discussion. That concludes my report, but I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
Thank you, Deputy Director. So I'll toss it to Council. I see Councillor O'Sullivan has got a hand up. So we'll go to her first, and the rest of you can consider what questions you want. Go ahead,
Okay.
Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to Director Mosher. Sorry,
Deputy
Director
Director Mosher.
We're really trying to promote you tonight, aren't we? So I have actually a number of questions, and it's possible that I will come up with other questions later. It's just in reviewing this today, I came up with quite a few. So I can give them to you all at once, or we can stop and you can answer whatever you like. Do you want me to give them all?
Whatever the councillor wants.
Sure. Okay. So I'm looking at the North Grenville Developers Guide that I have. So one question is, was the developer provided with this North Grenville Developers Guide? And then next question is, was there pre-consultation about this? And is it considered a new development or a redevelopment? And then in the developer's guide, on page 25, 26, 27 of the developer's guide, there are a lot of things that seem to have been not included in this plan. I see there's talk of parking spaces, that there has to be a certain number. I think it was 70 vehicle parking spaces, but there's absolutely no mention of any bicycle parking. The landscaping buffer, it only speaks of landscaping buffer along the side lot lines, not along the rear lot line. And there is to be a zoning bylaw amendment to ensure that there is tree buffering between any redevelopment or new development and residential. So there's residential along the rear of this property. The Shore Tanner report on page 4, it speaks about the demographics of the people who live here, but it doesn't take into account any active transportation. Yet we do have a new MUP all along the side, or will have a new MUP along County Road 43 all the way there. And so there's no consideration of staff or customers who would access the building either as pedestrians or on bicycles. And if they do bike there, there's no consideration of bicycle parking and racks that I could see. There's only mention of the parking for vehicles. And then it speaks about being vehicle oriented. And I'm not sure if that's, it's making it sound like that's a positive thing. And yet on page 26 of the North Grenville Developers Guide, it talks about opportunities for interconnections between bike routes and open spaces. And it talks about to improve the viability of cycling and active transportation as an alternative to car use. And yet it seems like the only considerations in this document have been for vehicles, not for active transportation. So I don't see that vehicle oriented is a plus that I would want to see, because we already know that some of the commercial properties are certainly not pedestrian or cycling friendly. So the tree buffering was one of my questions, and then the landscape buffers and the parking spaces. And I know you said any and all comments tonight, but I know that these reports were on from July and from October, and all the consultation with the bylaw and Public Works and the United Counties and Enbridge Gas. They have a lot more opportunity to look things over in pretty good detail, and yet we get 5 days to review all this, and I know that's the procedure. So it's just I'm hoping that I have asked all my questions right now, but something else might come up. Anyway.
Okay, let me,
So, thanks.
yeah. Through you, Deputy Mayor.
Just to Councillor O'Sullivan, it's coming back to us at some point, hopefully within the next week or so. So you'll have plenty of time to develop some more questions and take a look at the material. But go ahead, Deputy Director.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to say, I don't think I can answer that last one, but I'll do my best to answer the other questions. Was the NG Developers Guide provided? I don't know. I can find out. Was there pre-consultation? Yes, there absolutely was. This is not considered to be new development. It would be considered to be redevelopment as far as staff is concerned. And then regarding biking, lands for buffering and residential, there are lands for buffering. So the municipality actually purchased land from the residential subdivision to the north when those lands were developed to keep a natural corridor. So that's it varies in width, but it's 15 to 20 meters, as much as 30 meters in some sections. And then at the rear of this property, there's also another 15 meters of buffer from the water course. So from that perspective of the buffering, that's fine from a staff view. Regarding the requirements for landscape open space, there is a previous, again, I did touch on this and it's more fulsomely discussed in my report, but there was a previous site-specific zone amendment in 2007 that was obtained. So the individuals aren't looking to change that, whether it's the parking spaces, the landscape space, or anything. And certainly there is a right that's been granted to them. So they are still keeping landscape open space. They're just not maybe going to a 3-meter standard. They have a 1.5 meter right, and that's what they're proposing to continue. And again, being a redevelopment, that seems from a staff view reasonable. The Shore Tanner report, the fact that it doesn't assess active transportation, that may very well be the case, but that's not its point. Its point is to assess the retail market and the impact of this use to the retail market. So it's not a active transportation study, and it doesn't really account for that because yes, there are some growing active transportation networks that our community has. And we know that once County Road 43 is complete within this area, that there will be active transportation routes just going right by the front of this property, which is fantastic. But we are still a vehicle dominated community. And so that's the primary focus of the retail market impact study. I think that's everything that I had.
Councillor O'Sullivan, follow up?
Well, the developer's guide, I do question then, why wouldn't it have been provided to the developer? This was a guide that we put together and in 2022, so that developers would pay attention to the things that were important to us. And that includes active transportation connections and facilities, infrastructure for active transportation. So I don't understand why they wouldn't have been provided with this developer's guide and expected to adhere to what we are looking for. So is there new building coming with this? Because you're talking about the change in height, or are they just renovating what already exists?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, no change to the structure at this point in time.
So wasn't there some mention of a change in the height of the building?
Through the Deputy Mayor, yes. So the zone standard for the C3 zone allows for a higher height as of right. That's just the standard. So that's the requested or the noted change rather.
Okay, but it doesn't mean that they're building on or higher.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay. Well, I guess those are my questions. I would like to see that the developer guidelines are provided to any developer. Like, there's not much point in us having those guidelines if they're not given to the developers. Like, I don't think we've changed our minds since 2022 on what we'd like to see, especially, there may be revisions, but I thought this should be something that they all get.
I think the CAO might want to address that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The thing to remember here that this is it is not a new development site. If it was a new developer, then they would be getting the guideline. what Deputy Director said was that he does not know if they had the guide, that he could find out if they received the guide. But again, there's no physical changes occurring on the site at this time, that they're looking at the best use in regards to the property itself. So it is my understanding that no footprint changes. Phil or Deputy Director, please correct me if I'm wrong. There is no changes to the footprint of the building, no expected changes to the outside, including any of the rear or front or sides, as well as the buffering that is already municipally owned at the rear. So as I said, this is a redevelopment. The MUP is going along the full frontal of the property. But really, that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Dunlop. So it does say in this document, though, that new development or redevelopment will be expected to provide bicycle lanes on, and bicycle racks and etc. in all commercial development. So the initial time would have been, if this is the same owner that has had the land since it was first developed and when PV Mart was there, if it's the same owner, they wouldn't have had this document at that time because it's new to us since 2022, new to North Grenville. So the redevelopment should take into consideration all of the new guidelines that we've put in place. So things have changed, our wants have changed, and so I would think that, and it does say development, new development or redevelopment should adhere to these things. So unless if it's not a new owner, well, then they still need to get the guidelines.
Ms. Dunlop?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We do have the bike rack program, which was just highlighted to me that we can make them aware of, but no site plan was triggered at this point in time. So there's no, as I said, no changes to the property, but we can make sure that we make them aware of the bike rack sharing program, that we can share the cost to get one at that site.
Okay. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Starkian, do you have any questions for Deputy Director Mosher? No? I do. Mr. Mosher, could you throw up that chart that compares the current zoning with the requested zoning? Because it'll help me formulate this question. The differences, I'm sorry, that would be Caitlin. Could you go back to Deputy Director Mosher's report? Yeah. And there we go. So it's existing as C4-5, and they're proposing a new bylaw amendment. The differences that I see is that the maximum gross leasable floor space, they're looking to increase that by 600 square meters. But if there's talk of retail store, department store, restaurant, does that exclude, does C4-5 currently exclude grocery stores?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah.
Yes, the current C4-5 zoning with its limited uses does exclude a grocery store at this site.
And that's what the owner is considering, or the leaseholder is considering, is the grocery store at that location. And
Yeah,
I assume they need the larger floor space to accommodate that, or to make it as effective as possible.
Yeah, they may be able to speak and answer that question a little bit more specifically.
Okay.
I believe that is a possibility, but they're asking for just the much greater number of uses to attract many more types of retailers at the space.
I see. Perhaps I'll pose that to the applicant, so maybe we can ask the applicant to weigh in, and I understand that they are here. I saw a first name, but I didn't see a last name. I apologize. If that concludes the questions from council, perhaps the applicant could address my question and maybe some of the other questions that have come up. And who is
Good
speaking
evening.
on behalf of the, oh, there we go. Dominique Tremblay. Yes,
Yeah, hi.
welcome. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me tonight. So just to answer a couple of questions, I took some notes, and I apologize if I forgot some of the, to answer some of the question. So the first initial question, I think it was from the Deputy Mayor, is regarding the proposed use. So yeah, the grocery store, like the supermarket, is one of the use that is going to be sought by the owner to entertain. But the main purpose of the application was, as mentioned by Mr. Mosher, is to increase the type of uses that are permitted on the site. As you know, right now, the exception to the zone is limited, the uses to 4 or 5 type of use. So we want to recognize the fact that it's on a major corridor and increase the list of permitted use on that site. So there's no specific use at the moment. The purpose of this application was to increase the list of permitted uses. Regarding the other question about the developer guide, I was not provided it. I know that I've looked at all the documents that were provided as part of the pre-consultation meeting. However, we'll take a pleasure to review it. And as mentioned by the CAO, we will look and see if there's anything that we could include as part of the development. And just to let you confirm as well that there's no proposed change physically to the building. The building will remain the same. If ever there's a case of increasing the size of the building or changing anything physically to the building, we'll have to go through a site plan process and therefore make sure that we meet all the design guidelines into the developer's guide. Based on the comments, I'm here to represent the owner of the building, which is the same owner as PV Mart. The ownership didn't change since. I just want to clarify that I really appreciate the conversation that we had this morning and the exchange that we had with the planning department, and that I'm sure that we're going to find a solution based on the cap of square footage of the supermarket use. Just on behalf of the client, we just want to make sure that the full space of the existing building could be used to the same tenant. So to make sure that we're able to lease the 2,400 square meter, which is the existing size of the building. That's basically what we're looking for, to have the cap for the superstore at that location to be able to use the existing building. So I think I've touched pretty much on all the questions, but I'm available if there's an extra question or specific question that I'm able to answer.
Thanks very much. What's the current floor space of the current building?
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor,
Yeah.
it's 2,400 square meters. That's the existing floor of the building.
And with the zoning amendment, it would increase to 3,000, but you don't have 3,000. You only have 2,400. I see.
Exactly. So based on the discussion that we had with Mr. Mosher and the peer reviewer and our and Short Tanner that did the market analysis, there was no cap in ours. The peer reviewer is kind of requesting to have a cap, so that's the discussion on where we're going to end up. But the owner's request is to be able to lease the exact square footage of his entire building and not be left with 400 or 300 square meters of space that the one tenant could not be used.
Right. Okay. Council, any questions for the applicant or their agent? No, not seeing any. Now, thank you very much, Ms. Tremblay. Now, if there's any individuals who'd like to speak in favor of the application, I guess there's no one we have no one. Is that correct, Caitlin? Or is John Lean a member of the public?
I believe so. I
Yeah.
would ask if there is a member on the meeting that would like to speak, they would use the raised hand function.
Right. And I don't see any hands raised. So we move on. Are there any individuals who would like to speak in opposition of the application? If there are, please use the raise hand function and wait to be called before unmuting. And I see none. So let me read the recommendation and I'll look for a mover and a seconder. The recommendation is that council holds the public meeting for the requested zone amendment, being an amendment to change the zoning at 2973-2979 County Road 43 from shopping center commercial exemption zone C4-5 to highway commercial exemption zone C3-36 to permit an expanded list of permitted uses and establish the minimum gross floor area. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this motion, please? Councillor Strecker-Yan, it moves, and seconded by Councillor Wilson. Any discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Technical question, Ms. Boss, do I close this public meeting and open the next one, or do we just slide right into continued public meeting?
We can continue into the next public meeting.
Okay, great. So the second application we're going to hear from Mr. Mosher is ZBA-11-25 for general housekeeping amendments. Mr. Mosher, take it away.
Okay, I'm going to share screen again.
Okay.
Just let me know when you can see it. Thank you.
We can see it. I can see it.
Okay, excellent. Okay. So this zone amendment is a staff/council initiated one. As we've used the zoning bylaw from time to time, we become aware that there's either issues, errors, disputes in interpretation, or sometimes there's direction that's provided to staff to look at certain parameters within a zoning bylaw. At a recent meeting of council, there was a request about the abolition of the R1 zone. There are other requests that just due to time, we weren't able to get into this review, but we always keep a list of ongoing issues. So that will be coming forward at future housekeeping zone amendments. But for today, we're bringing forward a list of things for council's consideration and discussion. And I think the last time that we brought one forward was in 2023. So it's been a little bit of time. I think there are many sections which my report's going to go through. I'll give it a quick run through here. I don't want to read the whole thing, but we are looking at the establishment of a source water protection zone overlay and limitations on certain land uses within specific wellhead protection areas. Our ARU programs have been very successful, and we have seen a lot of people who are constructing new AR units, additional residential units within the community. And we've been running into some issues in terms of interpretation of what's the max size that's permitted. So we want to talk a bit about that, bring forward some proposed amendments for council. We were asked to look at zone standards for the keeping of hens within residential zones. So we have brought forward some of that information for your consideration tonight. There was a really interesting situation this past year where somebody wanted to construct a type of barrier-free access to their property, but it was not within the listed types that are within our zoning bylaw. So we want to amend that wording to broaden it, make it more permissive. We're interested in looking at minimum setbacks for walkways, and these would be distinct from driveways, and they would allow folks to have just a little bit more hardscaping, landscaped areas adjacent to driveway, extend more into an interior side yard. Again, we are looking at potentially reclassifying the R1 and R2 zones as R2A and B to de facto get rid of the R1 zone category. And then finally, we have a few things that are just minor issues. Either there's been a decision in the past calendar year, but a matter was missed, or there's been just a consistent application error within specific subdivisions, and those will be touched on with this porch encroachments, the parking setback for the R329 zone category, the interior side yard for the R421 zone category. And then I guess the final two things to touch on are we've run into an issue before where some zone amendments of the past didn't have the phrase building structures and uses accessory to a permitted use. So they may allow a lot of uses, but then they don't have that. So then they're really truncated and they couldn't do things that were kind of similar or in nature to those other list of uses. So we've identified a number of zones where we think that wording should be added in just to provide more flexibility for the average person. And finally, we've identified one zone schedule error where we think the land should be rezoned from institutional to either residential first density or residential low density A, depending on what happens with the R1 zone itself. So that's the high level overview, and I'm going to go into a bit of detail now. I think I'll spend the most time on source water, accessory residential units. We'll talk about hens. I think there might be a request to defer some of that. The staff report has been updated to reflect that, but here we go. I wanted to share this map as the first slide for the discussion on source water protection. I think it's important for it to be shared because it shows the distinct areas within the municipality. Now, this is available from the Mississippi Rideau Source Protection Plan website. And what it's showing, the thing that really stands out to me is the red circles. These red circles are the 100-meter distance for wells, and they're the critical area of influence where based on source water protection, based on the Clean Water Act, a municipality and a risk management office is to be the most restricted with the kinds of uses that would be permitted within these drinking water areas, and for good reason, because that's where if something happens that's a contaminating activity, it has the highest potential to impact a large amount of users and their water supply. So there's also this faint green line, which is a little bit more difficult to see. But this is the wellhead protection area B. So when you think of wellhead protection area and vulnerability scores, A is obviously the highest. Contaminating activity within the 100 meters of a well has the smallest time of travel to a well. Within wellhead protection area B, the time of travel to wells is a little bit greater depending on where the event occurs. And then when you go into the wellhead protection area C, which is all of the yellow in the dash, the time to travel is even less. So we're most concerned, again, with the uses in and around wells. What staff's proposing, and we do actually have some source water provisions within the zone bylaw today, but they act as a prohibition and they read to say everything is prohibited. No buildings or structures within 100 meters of a well, a municipal well. And in practice, that's not great because there are existing uses and users, and they shouldn't be prevented from having, let's say, an accessory structure or a use or other thing that's not a risky use. So staff is proposing that we would remove the current prohibition on building structures, land uses within 100 meters of a well, and instead establish a new overlay zone. That overlay zone would be a mirror of the map that was just shown. And the key points of it would be an establishment of prohibited uses within wellhead protection areas A, that's with a vulnerability score of 10, and then an establishment of limits and exemptions on dense non-aqueous phase liquids. Think sinkers, not floaters. These are the types of contaminants that if they get into a water supply, they often sink to the bottom and persist for many years and lifetimes. So that's it in a broad brush. I think if there's any questions, I can continue with my presentation. I do want to say, like, please interrupt me because it may be better for flow if we kind of stick on a thing. Okay, I see that there's a question from Councillor Wilson. Just going to stop share for a second.
Yeah, I'm just going to, pick up on your last comment, Deputy Director, and thinking about the best way to manage this conversation. So maybe you've started with the wellhead protection areas and that part of the housekeeping bylaw, but maybe I could ask council if there are certain elements that they, besides this one, rather than go through every single one, you have your own priority list, but I think we'll dance from council and what they want to talk about. I'm certain, I'm happy to start with this one as the first one, but maybe once we sort of provide you with all our comments about the wellhead prevention protection areas, then maybe we can briefly decide which other ones we're going to attack. But Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor or Deputy Mayor Barclay. I just have a question about, you have the list of things that are prohibited. My question would be, is the geothermal installation, what does that refer to? Can you explain why geothermal would not be permitted? Is it because of what is used in the actual geothermal piping, or is there another reason?
Yeah, and I just have the list of uses that would be proposed within this here now, so all can see. I did have a chance to, I guess I also want to say that this these policies and these lists have been created in conjunction with our risk management official from the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority's Source Protection Office. And I had a chance to speak with her about geothermal today because I figured that question may be coming. So key things. Why geothermal? I guess that's the first question that you've asked. It's geothermal, especially the ones that are closed loop or open loop.
Okay.
These are things that either are within a well itself or a contained system, but that's buried within the ground. They are the types of installation that have the most potential to be a contaminating activity. And the other thing to note about the language that's used in the proposed section 6.47.1, it's that this is for non-residential uses. So if I'm a residential user and I want to establish this, and it's not a significant drinking water threat, I can do so. For geothermal, I would have to get the necessary permits to do that. That requires approval from the ministry as well as the building permit, and may require information and studies to demonstrate that it's an okay use. And yes, the Source Protection Office did say, like, where it's an open source, ground source heat pump, or a closed loop even, those are the ones that within the proximity, they're the most potentially damaging to a municipal well supply. Staff wanted to know, like, okay, well, within our existing wells, how many properties are we talking? And there's about 100 properties within the vicinity of those wells. Not all of those would actually have the amount of area needed to get a loop
Right.
down because they're in town. And the other factor that's interesting is we have our water sewer use bylaw, and there's a section within that that says that no development shall be permitted to be on private services, wells, where it's in the municipal serviced area and there's the ability to connect to municipal services. So even if somebody wanted to establish one of these types of things for residential, there is a path to do it. And the other factor is it would have to be a closed loop system. They need enough land to do it.
Right.
And there's the ability for them to get it. But that's the, I guess, reasons why geothermal is within this list.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Supplemental, can I ask another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Can you be specific as to what the dense non-aqueous phase liquids would entail?
Apples. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a hydrogeologist, but I have picked up some things over my time as a planner. So I know some of the chemical families, although there is a large list, and I can provide that to council after. The
Okay.
two that come to mind readily for me right now are dry cleaning chemicals. Those are one. The other one is polyfluoroalkylated substances, or PFAS. And these are kind of what we call forever chemicals. And in the two instances of which I've become aware of these are the types of things that when they get into the groundwater, they often stay and are persistent. So those are the two I know of, but I can get the fulsome list if council would like.
Yeah, just out of curiosity. But anyways, thank you.
Any other questions regarding wellhead protection areas? Ms. Dunlop, did you want to add something to this particular housekeeping?
Only in regards to your DNAPLs, the one that came up most commonly in regards to some of our public consultation were brake fluids or brake cleaning fluids. There is one that is heavier than water, and then there is one that doesn't. So there's a good and a bad. And that was one of the most commonly identified DNAPL that we want to stay away from.
And what about cooking fluids or cooking oils, different types of oils? No?
With the list that I have currently in front of me through you, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
They are not, but it's dry cleaning fluids, metal cleaners, certain adhesives, certain fire extinguishing chemicals, paint strippers, creosote, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Dunlop, you've got that list in front of you. It may not be comprehensive, but does it also include glycol, which is
Glycol.
used in geothermal that you're aware?
It does not specifically list that, but it does say that any of the items that are heavier than water, because then they sink through the aquifer and they stay there forever.
Right. Before I ask my question, Councillor Strakian, do you have anything you want to direct to Deputy Director Mosher regarding wellhead protection areas?
No, this makes a whole lot of sense to me. Thank you, Deputy
Okay.
Mayor. There's my limited exposure to wellhead protection areas seems to make a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Okay. So, Deputy Director Mosher, I'd just like some clarification about wellhead protection area A. 6.47.1 deals with protection area A and non-residential use. What about the other larger areas? Are these items prohibited or are they limited in some way?
No,
And
they're
I
not.
imagine they're called B and C? No? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, they're not prohibited, but I will say that any of these types of activities are things that require risk management screening from the risk
Right.
management officials. And so there's a process that we typically consult with our source protection office on a monthly basis when new developments are being proposed, and we do a screening application and they ask some questions about the types of uses that are coming in. The vast majority of things are in the wellhead protection areas B and C. The vulnerability scores there are 8 and 6, 6 and 4, based on the source water plan. And no, these things aren't prohibited there. You still require risk management plans though. And that's partly about just registering where the thing is. And so if there's the risk management plan that gets developed for the specific use, specifies what happens in the event of a spill or any other thing like that.
Right. So for food grade glycol in geothermal systems in wellhead protection area B and C, from your experience, have you encountered where that's been prohibited for residential use? No,
I have not.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, through you, Mr. Chair, those are the types of things that there's a screening process to go through. In speaking with the risk management official today, there's some non-binding policies in the source protection plan for that type of a use to establish. There's the requirements to get approvals from the ministry, and there's requirements for building permits too.
Okay. Well, that's all my questions. I'm going to toss it to council, and I'm going to go to Councillor Strakian. Sorry to put you on the spot, but of that long shopping list of proposed changes, is there one that you wanted to address? And maybe that's the next one we'll take to entertain everybody's questions.
To Deputy Mayor, thank you for the question. No, I was anticipating a review of the entire presentation as laid out. It's not a very lengthy presentation, and I think it would help clarify perhaps some details behind why these changes are being made. So I would be content, and I would prefer to go through the entire presentation as in the agenda.
Okay. All right, Mr. Mosher. Councillor O'Sullivan, I'll give you the same opportunity. Is there one of these, Councillor Strakian has indicated you'd like to go through everything. Is there one that stands out for you that you've particularly got questions on that we could entertain next?
Okay, thank you. Actually, maybe I will wait, since we are going through more of the presentation past the source water provisions or protection area, then I'll wait and ask my question after. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Director Mosher, what's the next item that you'd like to bring to our attention?
The next one is additional dwelling units. So at a previous housekeeping bylaw in 2023, council allowed for there to be single and semis within the R1 zone, and then permitted up to 2 additional residential units in each half of the semi. So in effect, allowing 6 units on a property as of right. So that's been good. And we have seen, since those changes were made to the comprehensive zoning bylaw, I believe it's 19 additional residential units in 2024 and 2025 that have received permits. So that's been good. One of the current criteria that's just led to some odd math or calculations, or having to revisit many sets of architectural plans with individuals trying to construct an ARU, is this 50% of the gross floor area, and that the additional unit is not to exceed 50% of the gross floor area, the principal dwelling unit. So on smaller lots, let's say with older homes that are 1,000 square feet and maybe have small basement, maybe total square footage is like 1,750 square feet, including all floors. They have been having a hard time sometimes, in some instances, trying to get to that 50%. We did a jurisdictional scan of other ARU policies within other communities in Ontario. And what we found is that some people do say there's no restriction on the additional residential unit whatsoever, just has to be incidental and subordinate. We thought maybe that was just a bit too far. And so we are proposing that, yes, it has to be 50% of the principal gross floor area, but it can also be up to 100 square meters or 1,076 square feet, whichever is greater. And we think this will give people some flexibility to not get so tied up on the 50% and meeting a threshold. The other thing that we have been able to do sometimes is if someone wants to build a larger home, that becomes the principal, and whatever was previously there can become the additional residential unit. So we think this is a more permissive way to allow for ARUs to continue. And we think that this change makes a certain amount of sense. As staff, we're not fully prepared to offer to council or to recommend to council that you should get rid of the 50% altogether, but we think a cap is a decent way to do it.
Okay. Any questions from council to Deputy Director Mosher on this item? Seeing none, let's move on.
Okay, the next one. So staff was directed to look at backyard agriculture and hens specifically, and where they should be permitted. And it's interesting to note, the PPS is pretty silent on this type of land use. There is some related legislation I wanted to highlight. It's the Protection of Livestock and Poultry Act. Bylaw staff have use or familiarity with this, and essentially it says that if a dog is found killing or injuring livestock or poultry, and it's not under proper control, it's permitted to be killed. So it's kind of a dire thing. And we were like, oh, come on, there's got to be a common sense provision in there that distinguishes urban agriculture from regular livestock in a rural context. And no, there doesn't seem to be anything like that. So we just introduced that because it's something that could become a potential issue. So we wanted to raise it. But as proposed, staff is bringing forward a proposed bylaw wording that would allow for up to 5 backyard hens within a R1, 2, 3, 4 rural residential, rural mobile home park, or limited service residential zone. It would allow that you could have these 5 hens if you obtained a license from the municipality, which would be a separate bylaw that's passed. It would have regulations on where the coop and the run would have to be in proximity to side and rear yards. It would prohibit you could not have your coop and your run in your front or exterior side yard, so it has to be in the back. It would establish minimum distances from wells, 15 meters for a cased well, 30 meters for an uncased well, minimum distance for the septic system, minimum distances from neighboring dwellings, and if passed, would allow for an individual to have up to 5 hens on their property, with requirements and restrictions on location of the coop and the run. The official plan does speak about this in North Grenville. It says that hopefully before the next official plan update, staff and or council would bring forward some kind of consideration for backyard agriculture, and hens is one of those. There has been some discussion with the CAO's office after this report was drafted and some direction given. Staff had proposed that there be a minimum setback of 3 meters from coop and run to side and rear yards. The CAO has directed this be set at 1.5 meters. Staff's opinion was that 3 is a little bit more prudent when you're introducing something for the first time, as is 5 hens instead of 6. Start small. It's easier to winnow it back after a period of time, rather than to allow a lot all at once. This is not a pilot project that's being proposed. It is an amendment to the zone bylaw. So if it's permitted, you know, there's no, it'd be more challenging to walk it back, I suppose.
Okay,
And that's
questions? Questions from council? Councillor Strahan.
While I don't have a conflict, through you, Deputy Mayor, I don't have a conflict of interest or anything like that related to this. We do and have had hens on our properties, and we're not on a residential property. Just to clarify, first, I'd like to thank staff for bringing this forward. I think many folks have been waiting to receive some positive news about their opportunity to have hens, urban hens specifically. The point about the separation from side yards, I agree. I think there is an adjustment period. I think allowing hens in residential areas where there weren't before could potentially create some challenges between neighbors and so on. So I think allowing more of that space, that separation to start with, would be prudent. There's all sorts of considerations, the noise, although that very quickly falls into the background in our experience, as well as the smells and so on, and just the general changes related to having poultry next door. I think the 3 meters, I would prefer to see it set at 3 meters and then revisit it, you know, once the dust is settled, so to speak, to see if loosening that would make sense. I think, like as mentioned, once you set it at 1.5, you can't go to 3 meters because coops will be established, etc. And it would be very difficult to be more stringent. So those are my points off the top of my head. So thank you very much. I have read through the bylaw, and it makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you for the opportunity to make a comment. Through you to Mr. Mosher, I don't have chickens, and I'm not intending to get chickens, but I just wonder, sometimes the position of a house on the property and the location of the septic system and the location of the well limits whether it can be in the front yard or the backyard. Sometimes there's a wider side yard, and with fencing, etc., sometimes it might be more appropriate to have it in a side yard rather than in the back. So I'm just wondering if it's too prescriptive, if we limit it to backyards only. Just because if your septic system is back there and your well's in the front, you might not have a whole lot of options. So anyway, and I certainly would agree with the 3 meter setback, whether it's in this backyard or the side yard. So that's my comment.
Great.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Just to clarify, yeah, we as staff are not, we were saying like the backyard general. So what we had proposed, and I guess it's now this 1.5 meters, but we propose a minimum setback from the rear or the interior sides. So not in the front and not in like the exterior side, but anywhere in the backyard that you can meet those setbacks, the things could go. So I hope that clarifies.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, if I may just clarify, what do you mean exterior side yards versus side yard? Aren't they? Can you just clarify what you mean by the exterior side yard?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, sorry, planning lingo. Exterior side yard is a corner lot. So if I have a corner lot, I have a front yard and I have an exterior side yard. If I just have a traditional lot that fronts on the road and I have 2 neighbors on either side, then I have a front yard, 2 interior side yards, and a rear yard.
Okay, so these coops and runs would be allowed in the interior side yard.
Yeah, as long as they met that setback, and
Right.
in the rear, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Understand.
Okay. Councillor Wilson, do you have any questions on this item? No? I just before we go forward, you suggest that most of these backyard bylaws that I've seen, and I haven't seen a lot, refer to 6 hens. You're saying 6 hens is too much and we should dial back because it's a new bylaw to 5? So 6 hens is a lot and 5 is not? Is that correct?
Fair question. No, I haven't said any of those things. I guess what I
Okay.
would like to say is that in our research we did, we found there was a range between 3 to 9, and that was the range. And we found the most common number of hens permitted was 5 or 6. And then just out of an abundance of, let's try and be prudent as we introduce something new, let's go on the conservative side. So that's why staff's recommending 5. It is not that different from 6, but that is our thought process.
Okay, fair enough. That's it from me. Let's move on to the next item, please. Thanks.
Okay. We talked a bit about the barrier-free permitted. So there's a section in our zoning bylaw in section 6.50 which permits that you can have a barrier-free ramp, but it's specific to ramp, and you can have that in any yard that you want to allow somebody to gain access to their home. We had an interesting situation this past year. Somebody wanted to install a lift, but because the wording of the bylaw was so prescriptive, it didn't allow for that. And the only option for this individual who really needed something quickly was to go for a variance, which was costly and timely. Thankfully, we were able to find a solution with a ramp, but it was not fun and it was not enjoyable for the individual. And it's not something that we think should be repeated. So we're proposing that all forms of barrier-free access entry to a property, to a home, should be permitted. The only caveat we would seek to impose is that they not become a line of sight or traffic hazard obstruction, and that's it. So we're just proposing to kind of open that up a bit more, so to not have a repeat of that unfortunate situation.
Great. Thanks for flagging that and bringing that forward. Any questions on this particular item, Council? Okay, seeing none. Next item.
Walkways. We're proposing a provision in the bylaw that would make them distinct from driveways. So sometimes people have a little bit of nice stone at the edge of their driveway, and they may want to go a specific distance with it. It's nice and it's aesthetic, and they typically, when they're doing it, it's good and it's tasteful. But we have seen some instances sometimes where these things can just interfere with drainage or get too close to a neighbor, and they're not clearly defined. So staff is proposing that, like driveways, walkways be introduced in the bylaw, that they be allowed to be added on to the ends of driveways, so the sides, if you will, up to, and that they can extend up to, I think it's 0.5 meter towards an interior side yard, but no closer than 0.5 meter to that interior side yard, and not interfere with any drainage or access easements that might be present. And we think this is just a good way to clarify on a go-forward basis.
Great, thanks. Questions from council? No? Okay, seeing none. Next item, please. Thanks.
Okay, this one, yes. Yeah, so at a recent council meeting, there was this request to abolish the R1 zone. So I want to start with my caveat first, and that this is a simple name change only that's being proposed. Unfortunately, due to time, I didn't have the ability to kind of fully integrate all the zones together that I would have hoped. There's quite a bit of research that actually goes into the zone standards, and there's private service zone standards, partial service zone standards, and fully urban, and there's differences. And so with all of that, and just with wanting to bring something to council, I guess the caveat is, with more time, we could probably come up with something better. But with the short time that we had, we would recommend that if council does want to remove the reference to the R1, the single dwelling, the low density zone, that it's replaced, sorry, not low density, single family zone, that it's replaced with R2A and R2B, which would be low density A and low density B. There's no difference between the R1 and the R2A, or the R2 and the R2B. You could think of it like the R2A. It still has those dual provisions for if it's private services. And the R2B is the urban context. Both permit singles, both permit semis, both permit ARUs. One has provisions for private services, but there's no other changes other than name.
So are you, Deputy Director Mosher, are you proposing that this is deferred or referred back to you to come back with definitions, more fulsome definitions of each of these newly named zones?
It could be like it's really council's desire. Like if you're wanting to change the R1, like remove that from the zone, this would do it. But if it's referred back to staff, we would take some more time, and probably I would think mid 2026 we could propose something that's a little bit more integrated across all the different types of zones and servicing categories for R1 and R2.
So just so that I'm absolutely clear, we are simply renaming R1 to R2A and simply renaming R2 to R2B. There's no substantive change, therefore, to what's permitted in an R2A from what was previously permitted in an R1 zone, permitted or excluded.
Exactly.
Okay. But R2A would you're saying would include more than just single family homes?
No, it includes, so the previous change that was made in 2023 was that semis and duplexes were added into the R1 zone as permitted uses.
Mm-hmm.
So that change that occurred in 2023 would continue with this name change. Those are still permitted uses. There isn't within the R1 or the R2, apartments, for instance, aren't permitted. A person could have a sixplex theoretically,
Mm-hmm.
where they could have a semi-detached with 2 ARUs on each half.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it.
Okay. What would you propose to do if we wanted more substantive changes? That you'd come back sometime in 2026 with further definition of R2A and further definition of R2B?
Yes, I would propose. Yes, I would propose that.
Okay. So this would be different than you would need direction to do that in any recommendation that we pass tonight.
Yeah, I think, I would work with the clerk. I have the paragraphs of the bylaw. So if you didn't include this as one of the paragraphs that you passed with the bylaw, then I would simply, any recommendation that was passed would include an omission of whatever paragraph this referred to.
Okay. Well, I'll consider it. Right now, I have no objection to changing the name, but it doesn't seem to have any real substantive change to what's already on the books. That's my assumption. So I'll leave it to the rest of council whether they are willing to include this in the motion tonight or whether it requires further direction to staff through an additional paragraph to the motion that we're proposing. I don't see any appetite for it, so I'll leave it for now. Any questions from council on this particular name change? Go ahead. Good. Councillor Starkey, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I wasn't sure which way your question was going. Seeing as there's little value added to the name change, I would be in favor of providing some direction to staff to return with to allow more time for greater examination and more better definitions for the zoning categories and so on.
Okay. So perhaps the Deputy Director and the clerk could cobble together another paragraph, although we'll have to get buy-in from the majority of council when it comes to be moved and seconded, I guess. Further to this one item, Deputy Director Mosher, I know when I brought forward the notice of motion for infill intensification, most of the issues have been addressed, except for setback, and that was going to depend on information that you got from the Stormwater Master Plan. In the case of, I raise that in particular for what we're talking about right now. Do you anticipate, or I have no way of knowing, but when the Stormwater Master Plan comes to council and is passed, I assume, will that give you more flexibility in how to define R2As in terms of the type of housing that is built in that zone?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. I would say that yes, we have held up the full implementation of the infill and intensification changes, and I'd say we did council did 90% of what was asked. That lot coverage piece, you're right, it is one that's outstanding. We do have some preliminary information on the Stormwater Master Plan. I don't know if that's public yet, but I assume there will be a presentation to council at some point. My understanding of it is that, especially in older parts of town, that stormwater infrastructure is limited. So it's possible that in 2026, that could be a part or a component. I don't know if, based on the findings of the stormwater report, a global change could occur, but specifically within some neighborhoods where it's warranted, I think some of those changes to lot coverage could be possible.
Okay. Then I'm going to propose that we refer this particular item back to staff, and that there's a paragraph in the motion that you and the clerk will cobble together as we go through things. But I'll be looking for other members of council, I guess at this point, Councillor O'Sullivan, Councillor Wilson, to weigh in on what Councillor Starkian and I are suggesting, that this name change can occur 6 months from now when staff comes back with further detail on what's included or excluded in R2A, which is the R1 zone as it stands right now. And I would say that it's probably worthwhile to see what the implications are of the Stormwater Master Plan have in terms of lot coverage, and that might determine what type of buildings could be built or what type of buildings would be excluded from R2A, which is basically the R1 zone as defined currently. So rather long-winded, which is my style, but Councillor Wilson, Councillor O'Sullivan, I need you to weigh in whether you think this is something to entertain tonight in another paragraph connected to the recommendation.
Well, I agree. Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Councillor O'Sullivan, go ahead, and then I'll hear from Councillor Wilson.
I agree, a little more definition on what is and isn't allowed in the R2A zone versus the R1. Yeah, I think just it's a little vague, so I would like some more information, more details, that's all.
Okay. Councillor Wilson?
I would appreciate more detail also, just to be in better understanding of it.
Okay. So when we finish going through all the basic sections of this ZBA, then we'll hear from the public, and if there is anybody who has a comment on it, and then we'll entertain that additional paragraph, as well as the one that has been recommended, I guess, by the CAO about referring, coming back with a bylaw addressing the backyard hens. But let's get through it all, and then we'll come back and discuss the recommendation.
Okay, I will continue. I guess this is the miscellaneous category. So in the Oxford Village subdivision, the R137 zone category exists. Now it's been established for some time. And recently there have been there was a couple of corner lots with exterior side yards where porches were proposed to go into that exterior side yard. The site-specific zone category establishes a 3-meter requirement, and these porches were getting a little bit closer, maybe 2.7 or 1.8 meters, that kind of a thing. It's some time ago now, but there were some variances that were brought forward to the Committee of Adjustment and approved. And recently we've received a number of permit applications from Oxford Village with these corner lots. I think there's 6 in total, where they're asking for a single-story porch only to be able to encroach into the exterior side yard. So staff is proposing just an additional line of text within the R137, which is their specific zone category, to say that a single-story porch could extend into the exterior side yard. We did bring this change to Public Works, and we requested comments from a transportation planner, as it potentially could have been a line of sight issue. However, it's not, and that's based on the transportation planner and our Public Works staff review. All have reviewed that, and everybody is satisfied that that's okay. So staff's comfortable to recommend that change. The R329 zone category was 853 Prescott Street, so you, council, may remember that. In the course of preparing that information and material, the parking was proposed to be right next to a property boundary. Normally there's a 1.5 meter setback required. So staff has picked up this point because they're trying to obtain a building permit right now, and it was acknowledged by the consulting planner, as well as staff here at the municipality. It was something that was missed during the site-specific zone amendment. So staff is proposing that for the parking only, that the setback to the interior side yard be waived. That development still has to provide a lot grading and drainage plan, all of which have been reviewed by Public Works and have been signed off on. So staff's proposing that change. And just for reference, 853 Prescott Street was 8 units at the south end of town, just across from the college. And the final miscellaneous one is the minimum interior side yard for the R421 zone. This is a zone category that, well, there's a variance that's been passed, and so we just think, let's clean it up. And this is for, I think it's 321 Rita Street. It's the 8 units. Currently being occupied just north of the B&H. There was a Committee of Adjustment decision, AO 625, that reduced the interior side yard from 5.67 meters to 5.5 meters. So staff proposes that the zoning wording now just be cleaned up in our zone bylaw. That concludes the miscellaneous.
Okay. Any questions regarding the miscellaneous item? Being none, let's go on to the next item.
Okay. This is a rather text heavy. We've had some situations in recent time, and the two that kind of stood out for us that were recent and made us kind of pause and review the whole bylaw was the FEP-13 zone, as well as the R1-33 zone category. So with history, sometimes there were site-specific bylaws that were passed and they would limit uses, or there was decisions of tribunals or things like that. And whether intentionally or not, all of these listed zone categories failed to have buildings, structures, uses accessory to permitted uses, which is quite common. So staff is proposing that phrase be added in. Again, many of these exemptions relate to a site-specific zoning that occurred in the past. Currently, if this wording is not included within all of these zone categories, for instance, what it means is that someone can't argue for something that's kind of similar to one of these uses and makes sense as an extension of the existing business. And they would instead either have to come for a site-specific zoning amendment or come to the Committee of Adjustment. A real notable case in the last few years where this happened was the Boathouse Cafe. That was one where this type of language was not included. There was potentially a path that the use they wanted to do would have been included within that, but was not. So they came forward for a site-specific, and I know council remembers that file. So staff is proposing to rectify these zones and add this back in. It does not add any new uses other than things that are accessory to existing permitted uses.
Okay. Any questions regarding this? So basically, all these amendments, there must be 30 that I'm seeing, will have this language added
That
to
is what
include
staff,
buildings, structures that are accessory to the permitted use.
yes, that's what staff is proposing. Think of it in another way, like in these rural zones or residential first density zones or second or third. The individual could not have a shed. That's kind of like, again, it's just one of those oddities.
Okay. Well, that sounds long overdue, because look at all those items that don't have that phrase. So next item, unless there's questions, which I didn't pick up.
The final item is there's a series of 3 lots at the western edge of the Kemptville campus, and we're not entirely sure at what point in time they were lumped in with the institutional zone, but they were. And they all are homes with dwellings, which have institutional zoning. So, I mean, presently you could permit a wide variety of types of uses. So staff does view this as just a zoning oversight, likely at the time when the comprehensive zoning bylaw was amalgamating the former Kemptville and Oxford-on-Rideau. It's all got lumped together. So staff is proposing that these lands be rezoned from institutional to residential first density, given that we're tabling the R2A, and that zone change occur.
Any questions, council, on this? No. Yes, Councillor O'Sullivan, go ahead.
Sorry, it's not about this specific item, Concession Road, Dixon Trail. It's a supplemental question to everything that's been already included in this bylaw.
Okay. I'll look to Councillor Wilson or Councillor Strachan. And do you have any questions regarding this particular item before we go to Councillor O'Sullivan? Seeing none, go ahead. We'll entertain your general question.
Great, thank you. First of all, to Deputy Director Mosher and all of the planning staff, good job. Kudos to you guys, because going through all of this and finding all of the things that needed to be tidied up and housekeeping issues is pretty time consuming. And thank you for your diligence in getting this all cleaned up. So good job. My question is, and maybe it's not the right bylaw, but back in December of 24, council brought forward a motion regarding tree buffering between uses. And we were told that it would require a zoning bylaw amendment. So I'm just wondering, should that have been part of this comprehensive bylaw cleanup? Should it be included in that? Or is it a separate bylaw coming? And because it's a year this week since that was passed by council. So maybe you can help me out. Thank you.
Director Martin.
Thank you, Deputy Director. As part of that notice of motion, there were other items that were raised, including the care and maintenance of trees, and I believe there's another in tree conservation. Planning staff are working with both Parks and Recreation and our Public Works team to address that as one report moving forward. So any recommendations in regards to zoning would come part of that process.
If I may, this was a separate motion. It wasn't, the tree buffering was a separate motion from care and maintenance of trees.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor O'Sullivan, I do understand that. Both motions came on the same evening. They were related, even though they weren't directly related. One's related to zoning, one's related to our care of trees and our maintenance of trees. Through discussions at the senior management table, we've discussed about bringing all of that together as one package from a discussion standpoint, because there is some interrelation when we start talking about, especially tree resources along our trail networks. So the intent would be to bring that those 3 items at the same time for council's discussion and consideration. So it would be outside of our housekeeping amendment. The intent of the housekeeping amendment tonight was just to tidy up some of the more technical items, looking at any kind of additional landscaping provisions or buffering provisions. It requires more of a analysis of what other jurisdictions do and what are their other best practices for.
Thank you, Director Martin, and with your indulgence, Councillor O'Sullivan, I'd request that this particular line of question go offline so that we can stick to the matter at hand, which is the housekeeping amendment. Any other questions regarding this particular zoning bylaw amendment? None? Okay. Now, if there's any individuals who would like to speak in favor of the application, I'm asking them to raise their hand. I don't know if we have anyone in. It doesn't look like we have any members of the public. So anyone who wants to speak in favor or speak in opposition, I guess they don't have an opportunity at this point in time, but they can still direct questions, I guess, to the planning department. Okay, so any other further questions on this from staff? I think we've got a 3-part recommendation motion to discuss, and I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder, that council approves bylaw 97-25 being a housekeeping amendment for the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw 50-12 to amend various provisions of the existing bylaw, save and except for paragraphs 3 to 5 related to backyard hens. I'm sorry, I've missed some. Have I missed a question from Councillor Strakian? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Strakian. You're muted. You're muted.
Yes,
Sure.
you, Deputy Mayor. I would like you to finish what you were about to say, because I think you were about to touch on the question that I would like to raise regarding the backyard chickens. So,
Yeah. Okay. Let me just get a draft motion in front of council, and then we can get it moved and seconded, and then we can have a discussion about it and entertain any amendments. Deputy Director Mosher.
I just wanted, sorry, just before you get to the motion, I just want to say we did circulate in accordance with the Planning Act. We didn't receive comments formally for this at the time of publishing, and to my knowledge, not yet. And I'm going to go and work with the clerk on proposed wording. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Strakian.
the proposal through Deputy Mayor on the table right now is for the 3-meter setback. And the proposal has come through the CAO to change it to 1.5. I didn't hear anybody saying that they were supportive of the 1.5, but it seems to be included in tonight's motion. So I'm wondering if before you formalize this, if we could hear from the CAO as to the rationale of changing from 3 meters to 1.5.
Certainly, and nothing gets formalized until I call for the vote. But sure, Ms. Dunlop, can you respond to Councillor Strakian's question regarding the rationale behind keeping it at 3 meters versus 1.5?
Certainly, Deputy Mayor. In discussions not only with the planning but the bylaw department and the clerk, I looked at a various number of bylaws, and they had everything from 1.5 meters up to 10 meters. The planning department had put 3 meters in as their recommendation based on the reasoning that the deputy director has given you today. I've just put it in as a minimum based on the averages of about a dozen bylaws in the charts that were included in the Smith Falls evaluations. So that is the only premise behind the 1.5.
So, Councillor Strakian, from what I understand, the way it's drafted right now, and we're about to add a third paragraph dealing with R2A, R2B, that this would, the backyard hens would not be dealt with and staff would bring it back at a later date. So it's not necessarily defining what the setback would be, as I understand it.
Okay, I guess then through you, Deputy Mayor, is there further work that's required for this? Is this being deemed as incomplete at this stage? I guess I'm lost as to why this would be moved back. It seems like aside from perhaps some dotting I's and crossing T's, but the description seems very fulsome.
Okay. Director Martin, maybe you can shed some light on this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To Councillor Strachan, the intent is to bring this back at our December 16th council meeting for more discussion, where a licensing bylaw, which will include and mirror some of the provisions that were presented by the Deputy Director this evening in the zoning, will be more fulsomely discussed. So it was the intent that the zoning provisions presented this evening would come back on the 16th, just related to the backyard hen piece. Understanding we have another amendment being added in relation to the R2A and R2B zone, but that to allow for more discussion with the licensing bylaw, so that if there are any changes being made, we're not having to reopen the bylaw that was passed in the previous week.
Dr. Strachan?
Understood. If the licensing bylaw is the missing component, and that seems to be the biggest missing piece, I understood that the way it was presented, I understood that to be a separate part of the discussion based on what was decided tonight, but putting it all together makes sense. Understood. Thank you. Okay.
Let me get something read, moved, and seconded, and then we can discuss. So I'll go ahead with the 2 paragraphs as I have them, and we'll wait to have a third part of this motion provided by Deputy Director Mosher and our clerk. So the council approves bylaw 97-25 being a housekeeping amendment for the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw 50-12 to amend various provisions of the existing bylaw, save and except for paragraphs 3 to 5 related to backyard hens, and that council directs staff to bring back a specific zoning bylaw addressing paragraphs 3 to 5 related to backyard hens at the December 16, 2025 regular council meeting. And do we have anything for us to discuss? Clerk Boss. Oh, we've got something on the screen. Oh, here we go.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. The recommendation as we have drafted is on the left-hand side.
Yep.
And then on the right-hand side, you will see the result of passing that motion with the text that is struck out. So that would be paragraphs 3 to 5 related to the backyard hens. And then as we continue on, you'll see 12 and 13 as related to the R1 residential first density zone. And then without that name change, you'll just see the final 2, which are just striking out a reference to the R2A zone that we're not moving forward with this evening.
Okay. And the third paragraph, you've got as council direct staff to report back with a fulsome zoning. I'm sorry, it's very small. I can't read it.
Oh.
Zone category for the proposed R2A, R2B zones with proper zone regulations addressing paragraphs 12, 13 by the end of Q2. Okay. Ms. Boss, maybe you could get that motion up on the screen, eliminate the other strikeout pages. Yes, and if you could zoom that up. Okay, so council, there we have the motion on the floor. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Strachan. I'll need a seconder if we're going to go forward, and seconded by Councillor Wilson. Thank you very much. So now that it's on the table, let's have a discussion about it. Are people happy with what we've got so far? Does this reflect our discussion, what we're looking for? Anybody? No additions, no changes. We're all happy? Okay. All right, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Great. Thank you very much. So this concludes the public section of our agenda, and we're moving on to deputations and proclamations, and there are none that I'm aware of. Further minutes of previous meetings. I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the December 2nd, 2025 regular council meeting minutes as presented. Are there any questions on these minutes from December 2nd? It's shocking that it's so recent. I mean, it should be fresh in our memory without having to read them. No questions, so I'll look for someone to move acceptance of December 2nd, 2025 minutes. Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and seconded by Councillor Stracher. Thank you very much. Okay. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. And we're moving on to correspondence. And there's a whole list of correspondence that's been provided for information purposes. Are there any items that members would like to pull for consideration at a future meeting? Being none, we'll move forward. Any motions or notice of motions? Seeing none. On to petitions and written communications from the public. So I trust council has seen the communication from Roy Brown on behalf of the North Grenville Honor Roll project, requesting interpretive signage at the Lest We Forget crosswalk. Are there any questions or comments on the correspondence that you've seen from Mr. Brown? Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Barclay, question would be, if this is going to be a permanent crosswalk, then the signage would be there? That's what he's requesting?
Is that a question?
Yep.
Oh, I don't know.
So we are considering that this will be repainted every year or whenever as necessary? Is
Okay.
there any chance that it could be moved in the future? So then the signage would follow.
Okay, I'll look to our CAO, Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the intent of the signage is to go hand in hand with the existing PXO. The size and location of this, as it's been explained to me, is similar to one of the no parking signs, not a plaque per se as we would consider a heritage. So it would go on the PXO post or somewhere in the vicinity and would probably be max about 18 inches. So it's something that as you're pushing the button, you can see and understand the history of what that PXO means. So it is not an expensive proposition, but it is something that can be moved should the PXO, the Lest We Forget component, if it moves, the sign can go with it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions regarding Mr. Brown's request for a interpretive signage? It's not so much that might be a misnomer. It's not an interpretive sign like the ones we see that have been generated by the Historical Society and the Heritage Committee, but it's a simple plaque, and there's an illustration of it in his presentation for reference. So I'd be looking for someone to move the following recommendation: that council direct staff to investigate and report back by the end of Q1 with more information regarding the cost on the proposal to install signage at the Lest We Forget crosswalk as illustrated. So we're looking for staff to nail things down and provide us with a cost. But if the cost is minimal, I don't see why we couldn't just approve it going forward and ask staff to include it in the 2026 budget. Is that not correct, Ms. Dunlop? Could we not just approve it given the nature of the plaque, the size of the plaque, we can't be talking about a lot of money.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's very true. Based on my understanding, it shouldn't be an expensive proposition.
Yeah.
We're probably talking under $1,000 for the installation and creation of the two signs. I have asked Public Works to come up with a quote or a costing for the two signs. So I leave that at a council's direction. As I said, I don't think it is a cost prohibitive product.
Yeah, so I know that this motion was provided in advance of this meeting, but upon reflection, I don't know if we need much of an investigation in a report. All we need is to have staff consider it for inclusion in the 2026 budget.
The motion can be amended, I believe, as suggested, and we can move that forward. If I may, with the current delay in the presentation of the budget, I think that would an approval of this specific item moving forward based on the minimal dollar value would also be received by the department.
So I'm interpreting that as a yes, that we could approve or direct staff to consider it as part of the budget, the 2026 budget.
Or direct staff just to do it.
Oh, okay. All right. I would be looking for one of my council colleagues to make a motion to direct staff to include in the 2026 budget the cost of a interpretive signage at the Lest We Forget crosswalk as articulated in presentation submitted by Roy C. Brown. I don't know if Ms. Boss has captured that, but it looks like Councillor Strakian has a question or a comment. Go ahead.
Nope, you were looking for somebody from
A
council
mover
to support that motion,
Yeah, okay.
and I will
Well,
happily move that.
I know we're anxious to go shovel the driveway, but I think I will look to Ms. Boss to possibly read back what I just verbalized, because I probably said it 3 different ways.
Yes, of course, through you. The recommendation, as I have drafted it, reads that council directs staff to include the installation of signage at the Lest We Forget crosswalk as illustrated in the 2026 budget.
Great. And I believe, unless she objects, Councillor Strakian is moving that.
I'm happy to move that, Deputy.
And Councillor Wilson is also happy to second it, I'm assuming. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Great. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Miscellaneous unfinished business. There's no miscellaneous or unfinished business. Any questions from the media or the public? There's nobody here, but did we get any email questions within 2 hours of calling of this meeting? None. Okay. I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the confirmation bylaw. That the confirmation bylaw as attached to this agenda be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed in open council. Is that the correct language? This is foreign to me. That's what we need to say. Okay. So I'll look for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and seconded by Councillor Strakian. Thank you. Any discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Great. Thank you. Now we need a mover and a seconder for adjournment. I'll read it. That we adjourn at 8:19 p.m. to meet again at the call of the mayor. And that's been moved, I believe, by Councillor Strakian and seconded by thank you, Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Great. Thank you, everybody, for indulging me as your chair, and good luck shoveling. Good night, everybody.